Hi, I'm going to start with a content warning. I'm going to talk about depression and suicide and a bit about alcohol. So, if you need to stop the video at any time, feel free. Um, this video is going to be in two parts. The first part, I'm going to discuss my experience of depression and suicidality. The second part, I'm going to discuss S.T.A.R.T, which is a acronym that I came up with while I was in the library one day. Um, so I'll have a time in the description, so you can just skip to that part if you don't want to hear about my depression. uh, it's up to you. So depression. So I experienced pretty severe depression for about 9 months a few years ago, maybe like 3 years ago now. And it consisted of really feeling horrible. I've never felt that bad in my life. Um, I thought I would never feel better again. And I wanted to die all the time. I wanted to die every waking moment of my life, except for when I was at choir and when I was in pottery class. So those were the two times where I was kind of okay. I didn't actively want to die at those times. Um, so that experience really shaped who I am today, I guess. I survived that, and I don't feel horrible anymore. um, but I felt horrible for a long time. And I'm doing this video mostly so that people know that you can survive that kind of depression. Um, I remember this feeling of having like a shotgun under my chin, so I was like, damn, it's hard to run for the bus when you're holding a shotgun under your chin. That was really what I felt like, almost physically. It was a very visceral feeling. Um, and every truck that passed me, I was like, I want to step in front of that truck. Or I go to the train station and I'd be like, I want to step in front of that train. But I never did, and I'm glad I didn't, and I feel a lot better now. I had considered alcoholism very seriously. I had a plan for not becoming an alcoholic. So I thought, there's this person, and they would come and pick me up in their pickup truck if I called them, and they would tell me not to drink myself to death. Um, Sometimes I'm like, how serious was I? But I think it's really serious. If you consider like a life of alcoholism, and I literally considered, being 80 and an alcoholic, just destroying myself with alcohol. Um, but I had this person, excuse me, that was my phone. I had this person in my life who I thought maybe they might be disappointed if they ever found out that I was an alcoholic, and I would think about them every time I thought about drinking alcohol. And that helped me not become an alcoholic. Depression and alcohol is not a good mix. Um, the suicidality was not something I think I'll ever feel again. I mean, I'm 28, I'm pretty young. I don't think I'll ever feel that again. Um, but it was really severe. The depression, there were times when I would literally stare at a wall for 8 hours a day, and I wouldn't go out. I would go to bed at night, and I would leave my bed at night, and I would go shopping sometimes. Um, that was really serious. Uh, and, I would just lie in my bed and not move for 8 hours. And then I had trouble sleeping, so I wouldn't sleep either. I think a couple times I stayed up for a long time multiple days, maybe a couple days, to fall asleep, just so I could physically fall asleep. Um, so that was some experience. I did have this interesting experience where I described some of the what I had been suffering to someone, and this woman was like, "You're not really suicidal," kind of under her breath, and I was like, "Yeah, I definitely am." So don't ever do that. Don't look at someone and be like, "You're not suicidal," or some guy in the street was like, "What do you have to be sad about?" You know, because he was older, and I guess he was just bitter. I don't know if he was just bitter, but he could tell I was pretty sad. And if you're a young person, you can definitely be sad about things. You can definitely experience grief and loss, and don't ever feel bad if someone doesn't think you have or can. That's not their business. Um, so that's kind of a bit about the depression I experienced. I'm very glad I'm alive. I'm very glad that I survived that. I'm very glad that I stuck it through. I watched a lot of videos on YouTube about depression. I thought a lot about the consequences of suicide. Um, but when you're in that place, you really, only people who've been there will really understand, but you really seriously want to die. And you just think that if you're never going to feel better again, then why keep living? Um, and everything was like dull and gray, and all the color was sucked out of the world, and it was exhausting and painful to do anything. I remember a chili I had to make because I was going to a party, like a potluck, and I was like, I've never been in so much pain just making some food. And I just like drove myself through it, like forced myself to get all the ingredients together and put it all in a pot and cook it and put it in a Tupperware and bring it to this potluck, which was just something I kind of survived. I just got through the potluck. I was physically there. I talked to people periodically and sort of stare off into space a lot. Um, so that's a bit about my depression. I'm going to talk about S.T.A.R.T now. So S.T.A.R.T is this acronym. So I learned some stuff from my psychotherapist. So I have this card I made, and I developed S.T.A.R.T out of what I learned from my psychotherapist. And I think a bit from when I was depressed. And I learned this when sorry, excuse me. I I developed this out of my experiences. So there's more. I'm going to put a link in the description. There's a much expanded version of this, but these cards, I got like 500 of them. It was pretty cheap, and I just leave in places. And feel free to make cards like this yourself. I'm going to make stickers too. The stickers I'm going to put in like bathroom stalls because, well, I'll put them everywhere, but I'll put them in bathroom stalls because that's where people go to be upset, I figure. Um, so, maybe it'll help them, right? So it stands for survive, tolerate, adapt, rejuvenate, and thrive. So if you're stuck at a place and you don't feel you're thriving, you can just go back a step. And then when you're kind of ready, you can go forward a step. So I'm going to read the card. It says, you're surviving now. Lots of folks have survived before you. Think of your favorite people. That I did a lot. Sometimes I think about my birth mother. I was adopted, so I think about my birth mother. She had to survive long enough to put me up for adoption. Her mother had to survive. I came from a very impoverished country, and a lot of people had to survive that country with a lot of turmoil in order for me to be here. Tolerate. Use your favorite grounding techniques. Dip your head into cool water or put a cold item against the bridge of your nose for 30 seconds. So I think this is really exhilarating. I also think that running with a heavy bag is kind of exhilarating. I was at a golf course once. I was homeless and I was at a golf course and I had my 60-liter pack and a backpack on my front and I was just really booking it. And this golfer's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm running because it makes me feel good." You get all these endorphins and it physically made me feel good. And the golf course was just attached to this park that I was going to sleep in. And it was just a nice place to run. And then I just sat against a tree, and that's another grounding technique. Sit against a tree, um, do a walking meditation where you really pay attention to the feeling of your body and the weight of your body on your feet. And then there was just feeling the breeze against your skin, and I would say, it's a cool breeze against my skin. It means I'm alive. I can feel it, therefore I am alive. And that was helpful. Adapt. Use your experiences, lessons, joys, and sorrows to live through now. So just use your past life to live through what you survived your sorrow and you survived your grief and you survived your loss and you probably experienced joy in your life. So think about that. Even if it was way when you were a child, you probably experienced joy. So think about that feeling and know that if you've experienced joy once or twice or 100 times, you can experience it again. And you can find joy in the smallest things. Like when I knew my depression was lifting, when I was in my room and I was painting, and I noticed the light on the wall just from my lamp. And I liked the way the light hit the wall. I liked the look of it. And so I knew that I was feeling better. What really took me out of my depression was being involved in some political work where I was in a remote location with other people and we were trying to stop, or at the time I was there, we were stopping a gas pipeline that was set to go through totally untouched wilderness. And there was a river where you could just go down to the river and you could just drink from the river. We would just fill out jugs and we wouldn't have to process them decontaminate them or anything. We would just drink it. And they wanted to put this pipeline over that river and there was a potential for spillage. And for me, that took me out of my depression. I was no longer suicidal after I left that place because I cooked and cleaned and we shoveled so much snow. We shoveled a ridiculous amount of snow. And I worked with others for a common goal. And I had purpose. It gave me purpose. When I was depressed, I had no purpose. And that's a very difficult way to live. So try and find purpose in your life. Maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's working with a political group for social justice. Maybe it's talking to homeless people. Maybe, there's so many things that you can do. Maybe it's doing art to really find purpose in your life. And I think that having purpose is a really great way to stave off depression. And you survived your grief and your sorrow. If you're here now, you survived those things. Rejuvenate. Do things you like or think you might like. Try to work with your hands. I did pottery class. I love this kind of motion of when you have a blob of clay and you have to get all the air bubbles out, like that physical sensation of doing that. That was really helpful for me. I also like sewing with a machine. Again, that's working with your hands. Back to tolerate actually for a second. Other grounding techniques is just a strong scent like essential oils and just put the bottle up to your nose and just smell it. Kind of stops everything. Also reading aloud. When I was depressed, I would go to this hill and I would read aloud. And I'd often watch the sunset too in a park. But reading aloud takes a lot of mental concentration. I spent a lot of time reading aloud. And you can do that with other people. It's great. If you're depressed, it's great to be around other people. It's kind of hard. You can tend to self-isolate. I know I did. But you just get a book and you read aloud and then you just give it to the other person and they read aloud. It's a very therapeutic experience. So doing things with Rejuvenate, do things you like or think you might like. So I would do drawing and coloring. And I didn't really enjoy it at the time, but if you liked something before, you might like it again. And just doing those things, even repetitiously, you might eventually start to like them. I think art is really valuable for that. Thrive. What does thriving mean to you? Imagine it vividly. So I think that when you imagine yourself, just have an image in your mind of what it means for you to really be thriving. For me, I've got a gallery booking to show my art. I have a bunch of plans for an art exhibit. An installation, a public installation. So I'm going to work on getting funding for that and permission to do that somewhere. And I'm going to do a bunch of sewing and maybe sell some of my work. I'm feeling really good, and I'm really in a place of thriving. So again, you can just go back a step or go forward a step. Just think start, right? If you're really depressed, think start. Again, there's a link with a really expanded version of this. Feel free to make these cards and just put them places. It makes me feel really good to just put them, under people's windshield wipers, at cafes, at bus stops, just on the bus. Just leave them places. So the last thing I want to say is if you're feeling depressed, if you don't feel good about yourself, just write down, I am a fantastic person. I am marvelous. I live and breathe and bleed red, and a lot of people experience the same things that I do. That's what I really want you to do. Remember, someone told me, when I talked about my suicidality, they said, you're a very valuable person, and I'm glad you're still alive. And they barely knew me, right? And so you're valuable, you're alive. There's 6 billion people in the world, and there's going to be people who value your existence. I had a therapist, she said, 80% of people are good and 20% are bad. And she had told me about things that people had done to each other, which were horrible. And she still believed that. And so that's something I kind of cling to about the world, is that 80% of people really are good. So just, if you have to do affirmations every day, I'm marvelous, I'm good, I survived. Try and do that. And if you have any questions, ask them in the comments. I'll try and answer them. I survived 9 months of abject misery. And I really want people to know that you can survive this. So I think that's it. Thanks.